The day dragged on. Heat pressed down, the cries of the weak faded, and merchants grew louder as they fought to sell the last of their stock. Chains rattled, whips cracked. Buyers haggled, and through it all, the girl remained unseen, forgotten, invisible. Then something unusual happened. A figure entered the market. Unlike the others, he was tall, with pale sunburned skin instead of scales or alien hues. His clothes were plain, dusty from long travels. His boots were worn from endless roads, but it was his eyes that caught attention. Human eyes, sharp and searching, filled not with greed, but with something the market hadn't seen in years: pity. The merchants reacted instantly, rushing forward with greedy smiles. "A human buyer," they shouted. "Come, come. We have the strongest slaves. Look at this one. Strong as iron. This one shines like a jewel, special price for you." The human Elias moved slowly through the market, his gaze sweeping across the cages. The captives met his eyes in different ways, pleading silently, burning with hatred or too broken to look up at all. He said nothing. His face gave nothing away. Merchants grew impatient and followed, waving their hands and calling out, parading their best stock. But he kept walking until he stopped at the forgotten cage, the one everyone ignored. Inside sat the silver-skinned girl, Lyra, her spirit crushed. She lifted her head just enough to see him. Her faintly glowing eyes went dull for a moment. When their eyes locked, something shifted in both of them. The noise of the market seemed to fall away for Elias, and Lyra felt, for the first time in years, a stirring in her chest, hope. A merchant noticed and scoffed. "No, not her, weak, sick. You'll waste your credits." Another barked, "She can't even walk. She'll be dead by the weekend. Choose someone better." Elias's gaze tightened, his hand clenched at his side. He looked again at her thin frame, the bruised wrists, the empty stare, then he spoke, his voice low and steady like stone. "I'll take her." Silence hit the merchants for a heartbeat, then derisive laughter filled the market. Why waste money on that? A human's a fool. But Lyra heard only the words that mattered. "I'll take her." Something, long buried under chains and cruelty, beat again in her chest. She thought it a dream, until she saw the certainty in his eyes. In that moment, in the middle of the slave market, her fate began to tilt. The traders recovered quickly, circling him like vultures. One clapped Elias on the shoulder. "Take a stronger one, pay well, and get someone useful." Another hissed, "She's cursed, weak-boned. Not worth half a credit." Elias didn't step back. Calm and firm, he said again, "I'll take her." Confused looks passed among the merchants, then greed resurfaced. "If the fool insists on wasting his credits," the lead merchant, Zorak, shrugged, rubbing his hands. "Fine, full price. No haggling. But she eats like a burden and breaks like glass. If you insist, it'll cost you double." Elias's jaw tightened, as his eyes shifted from Zorak to the frail Lyra. She sat motionless, too weak to stand, her dim eyes flickering like dying embers. He wondered how much pain she had endured, how many days she had been mocked, ignored, and left to wither away. Without speaking, he reached into his worn pouch and dropped heavy coins onto Zorak's table. The sharp clink silenced the laughter. Gasps spread through the crowd as buyers whispered among themselves. Why her? Why waste coin on the useless one? Humans are strange, foolish creatures. Some shook their heads, others chuckled. But a few slaves dared to lift their eyes with faint sparks of hope. If one could be chosen, maybe others might too. Zorak's grin widened as he counted the money. "Very well, human. She's yours. Take her, and may you not regret it." With a snap of his fingers, two guards unlocked the cage and dragged Lyra out. Her thin body stumbled forward, legs trembling as though they'd forgotten how to walk. The chain at her neck rattled as the guards shoved her toward him. She braced for a blow or a harsh command. But instead, Elias caught her, steadying her with gentle hands. The softness of his touch stunned her more than the crowd's mockery. It wasn't rough, cruel, or possessive. It was steady, careful. She looked up, her eyes wide, and for the first time in years, she saw no greed or hunger staring back at her, only something she couldn't name. Zorak smirked. "Take her, human. She won't last a week. Remember my words," but Elias ignored him. Lifting her chains, he turned and walked away, the crowd's whispers trailing behind. Under the scorching sun, they stepped into the open streets. Lyra struggled to keep pace, her bare feet burning on the stones. Every step hurt, but she pushed forward, torn between fear and the fragile flame of something she hadn't felt in years, hope. At last, they reached the market's edge. Away from the shouting and laughter, Elias stopped. Drawing a small blade from his belt, he raised it toward her chains. Fear froze her. Was this it? Did he buy her only to kill her, far from witnesses? The blade gleamed cold in the light as he swung. With a sharp strike, the metal split. The chains clattered to the ground. Her wrists, raw and bruised, were suddenly free. She stared at them in disbelief, trembling. Her fingers touched the places where iron had bitten for so long. A broken breath slipped from her lips. Elias sheathed his blade and looked at her. His voice calm, strong. "You are free now." Lyra shook her head, unable to comprehend. "Free?" The word felt heavy, unreal. Her voice cracked. "Why? Why me? There were so many stronger, better. Why take the one no one wanted?" He held her gaze, steady and unwavering. "Because they saw nothing in you." "But I did." Her breath caught. Tears burned her eyes, though she fought them back. For years, she had been told she was worthless until she believed it. But here stood a stranger from another world who saw her differently. That truth shook her more deeply than the breaking of her chains. As they walked away, she glanced back one last time. The cages still stood. The merchants still shouted. The crowd still mocked. But she no longer belonged to that world. Her chains lay broken in the dust. And for the first time in her life, she walked toward the unknown. Toward hope. Yet in the shadows of the alleys, unseen eyes watched. The masters of the market did not like losing property. Though she was free, danger still lingered. Freedom always had a price, and Elias had only just begun to pay it. Her wrists were raw where the shackles had bitten deep. The skin was red and torn, yet she kept touching them, as if needing proof the chains were truly gone. Every step beside Elias felt unreal, like walking through a fragile dream that could vanish at any moment. The streets outside the market were alive with noise, vendors shouting over fruits, metals and spices, but she barely heard any of it. All she could hear was her heartbeat, racing wildly, reminding her that she was alive. Elias walked with calm, steady strides. His cloak brushed against the dust, his boots firm on the stones. He did not tug her by chains, for there were none. Instead, he simply glanced back now and then, checking if she followed. And each time their eyes met, she felt something unfamiliar, something gentle. Not command, not cruelty, but care. Her body was weak, her legs thin from hunger, and soon she stumbled. She fell to her knees on the burning stones, pain shooting through her limbs. Before she could drag herself forward, a hand reached down, strong, warm, and lifted her up. Elias's voice was calm, steady. "Slow, we're not in a hurry." She stared at him, stunned. No one had ever slowed their steps for her. She had always been forced to run, to obey, to suffer. Yet here was this human treating her as if she mattered. They moved on past crowded stalls, past alien stares filled with suspicion and whispers. Some pointed, others laughed. But Elias kept walking. "They bought the broken one," voices whispered, mocking. But Elias ignored them all. His shoulders were firm, his eyes fixed forward, as though no noise in the world could touch him. As the sun dipped lower, the streets grew quieter. The shouts of merchants faded at the city's edge. Near a small well, Elias stopped. He filled a flask with water and handed it to her. She froze, staring at it. Her throat burned with thirst, but she did not move. She had learned long ago that gifts came with punishment, that food and drink could be snatched away if she reached too eagerly. Elias noticed her hesitation. With a small nod, his voice soft, he said, "It's for you. Drink." Her hands trembled as she took it. The cool metal pressed against her palms. She lifted it to her lips, sipping first, then drinking deeply, water spilling down her chin. It was the sweetest taste she had ever known. Lowering the flask, her chest rose with heavy breaths. Tears blurred her glowing eyes, though she had not meant to cry. Elias said nothing, only offered her a piece of dry bread from his pouch. She ate in silence, small bites at first, then faster, desperate, until fear made her stop. Would he be angry at her hunger? But he only nodded as if to say, "Eat as much as you need." For the first time she could remember, warmth spread through her body, her stomach no longer empty. It was a strange feeling, comforting yet frightening. In a broken whisper she asked, "Why are you doing this?" Elias glanced at her, the fire of the sunset reflecting in his eyes. "Because no one else would," he said simply. The word struck her harder than any whip. Because no one else would. Was that truly the only reason? Or was there something more hidden in his tone? Something she could not yet name. Night began to fall. They left the city behind, walking a lonely road beneath a sky painted with stars. She stumbled again, and this time Elias placed his cloak around her thin shoulders. The fabric was rough, smelling of earth and smoke, but it was warm. She clutched it close, lifting, her eyes to the sky. It had been so long since she'd seen the stars, without bars between her and the light. The vastness frightened her, yet it filled her with something else as well, possibility. They stopped near a rise of rocks at the roadside. Elias gathered sticks and built a fire. Flames rose bright against the night. Lyra sat close, wrapped in his cloak, watching him move. His actions were quiet, steady, unhurried, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. The fire crackled softly, its glow pushing back the night's chill. She watched Elias closely, her mind heavy with questions she didn't know how to ask. Finally, her trembling voice broke the silence. "You could have left me, like all the others. Why didn't you?" Elias stared into the flames for a long moment before turning his gaze to her. His voice was calm, yet it carried a weight she could feel deep in her chest. "Because I couldn't," he said. "You were there and no one wanted you. I couldn't walk away." Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. Even without the chains of iron, she still felt bound, this time by fear, disbelief, and the heavy question echoing inside her. Was it possible that she was more than property? More than nothing? The fire burned steadily, warming her skin. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in a cage. She lay near the flames, wrapped in his cloak, her eyes closing slowly. Uneasy dreams crept in, but one thought stayed with her. She was walking a path she had never walked before, a path toward freedom, led by a human she didn't understand, but desperately wanted to believe in. Yet in the darkness beyond the firelight, shadows moved. Unseen figures watched from a distance. The market masters had not forgotten their loss, and danger crept closer with every passing step of the night. The fire burned lower, its glow flickering against the rocks, casting long shadows that danced like silent watchers. She pulled the cloak tighter around herself. Her body trembled, not from cold but from confusion. For years she had known nothing but cages, chains, and cruelty. Now she sat beneath the open stars beside a stranger who had bought her, yet freed her. Elias sat across from her, sharpening a knife against a stone. The soft scrape echoed in the quiet night, steady but not threatening. His hands moved with patience, his face calm, eyes distant in thought. She studied him the way she had learned to study her masters, but he was nothing like them. There was no greed in his stare, no hunger for power, only a quiet strength she could not yet understand. Her voice trembled as it slipped into the night. "Why me?" He paused, the knife still in his hand, then slowly set it aside. Her throat was dry, her words heavy with years of silence. "Why did you choose me when no one else did?" For a moment he didn't answer. His gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. Then he leaned closer to the fire, his words low but filled with conviction. "Because I saw someone worth saving." Her heart slammed against her chest. The words hit harder than any whip ever had. Worth saving. No one had ever spoken those words to her. Her lips trembled. She turned her face away, hiding the tears that burned in her eyes. She had promised herself long ago never to cry again, never to show weakness. But tonight, by this fire, wrapped in his cloak, those walls she had built around her heart began to break. Elias noticed her struggle but did not push. Instead, he stirred the fire, adding another stick, then pulled a small metal pot from his pack. Filling it with water from his flask, he dropped in a handful of dried herbs. Soon a warm, earthy scent drifted through the night air. Her stomach twisted with hunger, even though she had eaten bread earlier. She pulled the cloak tighter around herself, ashamed when it growled loudly. Elias glanced at her, but no harsh words followed. Instead, he poured some of the steaming broth into a small cup and set it gently by her hands. "Drink," he said simply. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. The rising steam brushed against her face. She sipped cautiously and warmth slid down her throat, spreading through her chest. Closing her eyes, she held the cup close as if afraid it might vanish. It was the first hot drink she could remember tasting in years, perhaps ever. Elias nodded once, satisfied, and leaned back against the rocks. They sat in silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the quiet hum of the desert night. Her eyelids grew heavy, but fear clung stubbornly to her chest. What if this was a trick? What if, when she woke, she was back in chains? Almost too softly to hear, she whispered, "If I sleep, will you keep me safe?" Elias turned his head, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. His voice was steady, leaving no space for doubt. She swallowed hard, lowering her eyes. No one had ever promised her safety before. Her chest tightened, her breath caught, and finally she lay down near the fire, the cloak wrapped around her thin frame. Her glowing eyes stayed open for a long while, watching the flames, listening to his steady breathing across from her. At last, slowly, they closed and sleep took her. Elias watched her in silence. In sleep, her thin face, etched by suffering, looked softer, almost peaceful. But he knew this peace would not last. The market masters would not let their loss go unchallenged. He had seen the way their guards watched as he left. Danger was coming. He would need to be ready. Hours passed. The fire burned low, and the desert wind whispered across the stones. Elias sat awake, his hand resting near his blade, his eyes scanning the darkness. Every rustle of the bushes, every shifting shadow made his body tense, but nothing came, not yet. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, he finally allowed himself to rest, leaning against the rocks, his eyes closed. Across the fire, Lyra stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly in her own alien tongue. The sound was sad, fragile, almost like a prayer. Elias listened for a moment, then let his eyes fall shut. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He had made his choice, and he would not abandon it. Morning light spilled across the land, the fire reduced to faint ashes. For a brief, terrifying moment, Lyra thought Elias had left her, but then she saw him standing nearby, his back straight, watching the road ahead. Against the rising sun, his figure looked unshakable. Relief washed over her, stronger than she expected. Slowly, she rose, clutching the cloak tighter around her shoulders. Elias turned to her and gave a short nod. "We move soon. Are you ready?" She hesitated, her voice fragile. I will try." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "That is enough." And so their journey began again, leaving behind the ashes of their first night together. But far behind them, unseen shadows moved, silent, patient. The market had not forgotten its lost property. Freedom would not come without a fight. The road stretched across the wildlands, cracked stone and rising dust marking their steps. Lyra walked close behind Elias, her bare feet aching, yet she did not complain. The cloak he had given her shielded her from the morning chill. Each step away from the market felt unreal, like she was walking through someone else's life. Not her own. But Elias knew freedom was fragile. His sharp eyes often swept the horizon, scanning the distance. He remembered the looks on the merchants' faces, the greed and rage when he took what they deemed worthless. To them she was still property, and stolen property demanded revenge. Lyra noticed the tension in his face. Her glowing eyes lifted to him, her voice trembling. You think they will come?" He did not answer right away. His jaw tightened, his silence heavy. Finally he said, "Yes, they will not let you go so easily. But if they come, they'll find me waiting." Her chest tightened, her heart pounding with fear. She had known punishment, cruelty, pain, but never someone willing to fight for her. She wanted to believe his words, yet doubt gnawed at her. Why would anyone risk their life for me? By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking barren land. Elias knelt, studying the ground carefully. There, faint but fresh, were boot prints. Heavy, many, moving their way. Lyra's breath caught, panic flooding her chest. "They are coming," she whispered, clutching the cloak tight around her. Elias rose slowly, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. "Yes," he said, his voice calm but cold. "They are close." Her body trembled, instincts screaming for her to run, to hide, but she knew she could not escape hunters, not in her weakened state. She turned to him, fear bright in her eyes. "They'll take me back. They'll chain me again. You should leave me. Save yourself." Elias's gaze snapped to her, sharp and unyielding. "Never," he said, his voice like iron striking stone. "I did not free you to abandon you. They'll have to go through me first." Her lips parted, her heart stunned. No one had ever said such words for her before. His words echoed inside her. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever stood for her. Tears burned her eyes, but she wiped them quickly, afraid to appear weak. Yet the truth was, her soul trembled more from his promise than from her fear. As the sun sank lower, they moved on, slower now. Elias guided her, carefully toward a cluster of old ruins, broken walls, and half-buried towers, remnants of a forgotten age. "Here," he said, leading her inside. "These stones will give us cover. We'll rest here until night." Lyra sank against a cracked wall, her body frail, her breathing shallow. Elias built a small fire, his movements quick and efficient, but his eyes never stayed still. They kept flicking to the shadows outside the ruins. Each gust of wind made his hand tighten around his blade. Her fear grew heavier, pressing against her chest until she whispered, "If they come, they will kill you because of me." He turned, meeting her gaze across the fire. "Then let them try," he said. "I have faced worse than greedy merchants. You are not going back. Not while I breathe." The words struck her like lightning. She wanted to protest, to say she was not worth this fight, but her throat closed and only a broken sound escaped. Her glowing eyes filled, and for the first time in years, she let her tears fall, silent tears not of despair, but of something she could not yet name. Night fell, wrapping the ruins in silence. The fire burned low, its light stretching shadows across broken stone. Lyra drifted half asleep against the wall, her body too exhausted to resist rest. But Elias stayed awake, sharp-eyed, still as stone. Then he heard it, a faint sound beyond the walls. Boots pressing into sand, whispers riding on the wind. He rose slowly, hand gripping his blade, heartbeat steady. They had come, just as he knew they would. Lyra stirred, her glowing eyes snapping open. She caught the tension in his stance. "They're here, aren't they?" she whispered. He gave a single nod. "Yes," he breathed. "Stay behind me. Don't move until I say." Fear surged through her veins like fire, freezing her in place. But when she looked at him, standing tall, blade ready, eyes burning with resolve, something steadied her heart. For the first time, she believed she was not alone. Figures emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness. Weapons glinted in the firelight, their voices low and cruel. One sneered, "Human hand over the girl. She belongs to the market, you cannot keep her." Elias's reply cut the night like steel. "She belongs to no one," he said, his blade flashing in the firelight. "She is free." The hunters laughed, harsh and cold. "Then you will die for her," one hissed, raising his weapon. Lyra's heart pounded, her breath quick and shallow. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body froze. All she could do was press her back against the stone, eyes wide, watching. Elias stepped forward, his shadow stretching tall against the fire. His voice steady, his eyes unshaken. "Then come." And then steel clashed for the first time, shattering the silence of the night. The air grew heavy with tension, every sound echoing through the ruins, boots scraping against stone and sand. Lyra crouched behind Elias, clutching her chest tightly. Her eyes shimmered in the firelight, filled with both fear and fragile hope. Powerless as she was, she still felt an unexpected sense of safety. Elias stood firm, blade steady in his grip, his body forming a shield between her and the hunters. He could feel their hostile gazes cutting through the dark, drawing closer step by step. One mistake would end everything, but he did not waver. He had made a promise, and promises were never broken. "Human," one of the hunters hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "Give her to us. She belongs to the market. No one can save her now." Elias's eyes narrowed, his voice cold as iron. "She belongs to no one. Not now, not ever." The hunters advanced, weapons gleaming like the fangs of beasts in the firelight. Lyra's heart pounded wildly. She wanted to scream, to flee, but her body refused to move. She could only watch in awe. This stranger was standing before her, an unbreakable wall. The first hunter lunged, his blade slicing through the air. Elias met him head-on, steel clashing against steel, sparks bursting into the night. His movements were precise and relentless, sharpened by years of survival. He wasn't just a man, he was a warrior, a shield, a savior. Lyra's breath caught with every strike and dodge. She had never seen anyone fight like this. And with each parry, a spark of hope lit inside her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she could be free. But the hunters pressed on, relentless in many. Still, Elias moved like a storm. Fluid, deadly, every step calculated. Dust and shadow swirled as the ruins, transformed into a battlefield, alive with chaos. Then a breakthrough. One hunter slipped past his defense. Elias stumbled but recovered instantly. His blade flashed, striking deep into the attacker's side, sending him crashing to the ground. The other hunters froze, fear flickering across their faces. They had underestimated him. They thought he was weak. They thought he would run. But they were wrong. Lyra's hands shook violently. She longed to help, to do something, but all she could do was watch and pray. Pray that he would not fall. Pray that she would never be dragged back into chains. Another hunter struck from behind. Elias spun, steel flashing, and caught the blade mid-swing. With sheer strength, he twisted the weapon aside, sending the attacker stumbling backward. A grunt, a fall, another enemy down. But Elias did not stop. He never paused. He moved like a phantom in the firelight, swift, precise, unstoppable. Every strike, every motion had a purpose to keep her safe. Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in her life, someone was risking everything for her. For her. And in that moment, she understood something she had never dared to believe. She was not worthless. She was not alone. The battle raged on, fierce and relentless. The hunters were skilled, but skill could not overcome his resolve. He fought like a storm, unyielding, devastating. One by one they fell, retreating into the shadows, defeated. Finally, silence claimed the ruins. Only Elias's ragged breathing filled the air as the fire crackled low. Lyra rushed to him, dropping to her knees. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. He met her eyes, exhausted but still burning with determination. "I'm fine," he said, though his strained voice betrayed the effort. "But we cannot stay. They'll return." She nodded, understanding. The danger was not over, but for the first time she felt safe, because he was with her, and he would not let anyone harm her. They slipped deeper into the ruins, silent and careful. Elias guided her to a small alcove hidden away from prying eyes. He offered her food, water, whatever little he could spare. Her hands shook as she drank, her mind still spinning from the fight. "I never thought anyone would fight for me," she whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. He gave her a faint, tired smile. "You are worth more than they ever saw," he said softly. "You are free now, and I'll make sure you stay free." The ruins, once a place of fear, became their fragile sanctuary. For the first time in her life, she felt hope. Hope that chains could be broken. Hope that someone truly cared. As she lay close to him, trembling but alive, she realized her life had changed forever, because he had stood for her, and in his stand she had tasted freedom. The fire burned low. The wind whispered through the broken walls, and in that quiet, the truth settled deep in her heart. She was not alone. She was not forgotten. She was free. Elias, tired, wounded, but unbroken, had given her that freedom. Even if it meant facing the shadows alone, even if it meant standing against the world, even if it meant risking everything for her. Dawn crept slowly over the jagged horizon. The ruins, once threatening, now glowed with soft amber light. Lyra shivered, not from fear or cold, but from exhaustion and awe. She had survived the night. She had survived the hunters. And beside her, Elias still sat. Elias moved quietly, his sharp gaze scanning the ruins for any sign of danger. The fight in the night had changed everything. His strength, his courage, his unwavering resolve had given her something she never thought. She would have a new life, a life she had only dared to dream about in whispers, a life she once believed impossible. And now, standing on the edge of a new day, she felt something unfamiliar yet overwhelming. Hope. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, his voice steady but low. She nodded, still catching her breath. Her trembling hands pulled the worn cloak tighter around her shoulders. "Ready for what?" she whispered, her voice fragile. "Ready to leave this place. Ready to start again. Ready to be free," he said, extending his hand toward her. Her glowing eyes widened, her heart hammering inside her chest. Freedom. Such a simple word, yet it carried more weight than all the chains that had ever bound her. They moved cautiously through the ruins, slipping between broken walls and jagged stones. Every shadow seemed alive, every gust of wind felt like a warning. But as the sky brightened, the fear that had gripped her heart slowly began to fade. Birdsong drifted from somewhere above, soft, unexpected, comforting. The air still smelled of dust and smoke, but now there was something else too, something cleaner, fresher. The scent of possibility, the promise of a world waiting beyond these ruins. Elias led her down a narrow path away from the broken stones of the past. The city in the distance still stirred with life, but its chaos felt far away now. They reached a small clearing ringed by trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. Lyra knelt to the ground, her trembling fingers brushing over the grass. She froze, softness, living softness. Not chains, not stone, not the hard, cold floors of cages. She could not even remember the last time she had felt something so simple. And then she smiled, faint but real. A smile born from deep inside, a smile she had thought lost forever. Elias watched her in silence. A faint smile tugged at his lips as well. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Her voice cracked as tears welled in her glowing eyes. "I never thought I'd feel safe." "You deserve it," he replied, firm but gentle. "No more chains. No more auctions. No more fear. Only freedom. Only tomorrow. Only the life we build." They kept walking, the city drawing closer with every step. People moved in the streets, ordinary, unaware. They had no idea what battles had been fought in the night. No idea what she had endured. But she didn't care. She had once been invisible, ignored, unwanted. A shadow no one looked at twice. But now she mattered. She mattered to him. And that single truth changed everything. As they entered the city, Elias's hand lingered close to hers, not to bind, not to control, but to protect. A silent promise that she would never face the world alone again. Lyra's glowing eyes swept across the city, wide with wonder. Towers of steel, glowing lights. People moving with purpose. Technology buzzing in every corner. Things she had only glimpsed from afar. For the first time, instead of fear, she felt something else stir within her. Excitement. Maybe she could belong here. Maybe she could build a life of her own. They walked through winding streets until Elias stopped at a quiet corner on the city's edge. He pushed open a door to reveal a modest room. Nothing grand, nothing luxurious, but safe, clean, welcoming. "Home," he said simply. The word struck her like a foreign melody. Home, something she had never truly known. But when she stepped inside, she felt it. A bed, a table, a window spilling golden morning light. Ordinary things, but to her they were extraordinary. Elias set down a small bag, pulling out food and water. "Eat," he said. "We'll figure out the rest later." She nodded gratefully, every bite reminding her of what she had gained. Life, freedom, and someone who had fought for her. Tears gathered in her glowing eyes as she finally whispered, "Why? Why did you save me?" Elias paused, his gaze steady, his voice quiet but firm. "Because no one deserves to be treated like they're nothing. You deserve to live, to dream, to be free." Her chest tightened, her heart swelling at his words. She realized the truth. He had given her a gift more valuable than anything she could imagine. Not just freedom, but hope. A chance to finally be herself. The sun rose higher, painting the room in golden light. She felt the weight of her past, chains, fear, cruelty slip away. Ahead lay something new, a new day, a new beginning. And for the first time in her life, she smiled freely. No fear, no hesitation, just joy. Because she knew that whatever came next, she would not face it alone. Elias had promised, and promises once spoken were never broken. Together they stood by the window watching the city awaken. And she understood something she had never known before. Freedom was not just the absence of chains. Freedom was the presence of someone who believed in you, and she had found that in the most unlikely place with the most unlikely human. The city stretched out before them, alive with possibility. And as the sun climbed higher, they stepped forward, two souls bound not by chains, but by courage, by hope, by a promise kept. And as they walked into their new life, Lyra knew one thing with unshakable certainty. She was free. Truly free. And nothing, not hunters, not chains, not fear, could ever take that away again.